Well, hello and welcome again to Tuesday Chat. This week we are very privileged to welcome the Principal of Gurteen College, Mr. Jon Parry. Good to have you with us, Jon.
Hi, Stephen. Hello, everybody. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, for me, when I was thinking about who to have in this, you just seemed an obvious person at the very start. So good to have you here. You've had an interesting start, to your year and a half at Gurteen so far. But maybe before we talk about Gurteen, we'll get to know you a bit, maybe better. Do you want to tell us? We guess that accent isn't from Tipperary, so maybe tell us about where you're from, your home setting and background and stuff.
But blending into Tipperary is difficult with this accent. You're right, Stephen. So thanks. For those that I haven't met, and apologies if there are viewers that I haven't met so far, but I'm doing my best to meet people in our community. I grew up in Cheshire, in rural England. Spent my youth in a rural school in Cheshire, and then went off to university and studied agriculture. My parents had a small farm at home, so I'd always had an interest in agriculture. I'm married. I'm married to Louise. We've been married 27 years now, and we have two children. Molly, who's just graduated from Bangor University in Wales with a degree in English, and Edwin, who's actually in the 6th year at Borotacane Community School, and he's taking his leaving certs this year. What a challenging year it's been for Edwin at school as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, thank you, Jon. And you mentioned blending in. For me, you blend in. It doesn't matter about the accent at all. You're part of us, and you certainly have blended in so well.
Oh, thank you.
Maybe just so you referred to just going to college and whatever, your sort of working life, your journey over the years before you came to Gurteen, where did that take you, and in terms of your interests and what you found yourself doing? So.
Yeah, sure. So for any agriculturalists that are watching, then they'll know that Cheshire's a real dairy county in England. You know, there's a lot of dairy cows in Cheshire. So you won't be surprised to know that when I was young, I worked on a number of dairy farms and gained quite a lot of experience around cows, and developed a real interest in my whole dairy industry, really, in terms of that. Went off to university, studied agriculture. When I left university, it was fairly obvious and clear to me at that point, even as a young person, that education was actually what I was really excited about and really passionate about. Right. So immediately having left university, I went back into college and I did teaching qualification. And then having completed that, I took up my first teaching role, which was in a college in Northern England. And when I looked around, if I'm absolutely honest, what I saw were a number of college lecturers who were much more skilled than I was at many aspects of agriculture. Right. And I thought, well, where does my niche lie in this career if I want to carve a career out of this? And there's some people here who are very talented at sheep production or tractor driving or whatever. Right. So I then went back to university again and did a degree in environmental management, because I thought that aspect around sort of landscape and biodiversity might be an area which would better suit my skills. And I spent probably 20 years working in education in Great Britain. I worked in a college in Scotland, and then I moved down into Shropshire and was director at an agricultural college down in Shropshire in terms of that. And then before coming to Ireland, for the last 6 years of my career in the UK, changed roles and I joined the Agricultural and Development Board, and that's as close as the UK has got to Teagasc. It's the sort of state advisory body, if that's the right way of describing it.
Right.
My role there was a national role, and I managed the dairy advisory team on that national role. Fantastic opportunity to have a real influence over farmer behavior and change management and those sorts of things. I'm really excited. But what I think became apparent was that I also missed working with young people.
Right, right.
And the longer I was in that role, I think the more clear that became to me that actually, whilst it was a great role with loads of opportunity and a big opportunity to make a difference to the industry, it was the spark and the dynamism of working with young people that I actually came to miss in terms of that process. I think that's the...
Okay, and yeah, I think I can identify something with that. And with that, I suppose I was going to ask you, right, what brought you to Gurteen, or maybe what brought you to Ireland? And I suppose you've touched on maybe part of that in terms of working with young people, but what caught your attention maybe when you heard about the position at Gurteen, or so?
Yeah, I think I've already said that, that I think I'd recognized that I was missing that spark and that dynamism from the young people. But honestly, I was 52 and I was in a very comfortable job. And actually the easy decision would have been to stay in that comfortable job until retirement. But my children are getting to that stage where they're independent adults, and myself and Louise, we were probably looking for a new challenge and a new adventure in our life. And Gurteen came along, and I didn't know very much about Gurteen when I saw the job advert in the Farmers Weekly, but I knew enough about Gurteen. I'd got some connections back here to Tipperary. I knew enough about Gurteen to know that it was worth investigating. And I think what struck me when I started doing some research and then visited the site is just how strong the history and the reputation of Gurteen was, but probably more importantly, how the core values of what I understood to be about Gurteen actually aligned with my personal beliefs. All that stuff around community spirit and around openness and fairness, that just really struck a chord with me. So I bit the bullet and I jumped on a plane. Those days when we could just travel around, it was great, wasn't it? I jumped on a plane and I flew over and I visited the campus here before interview. And what was very apparent when I came to the campus, clearly there's world-class facilities here, and anybody that's been on the campus will know that our farmyard, our teaching facilities were as good as they get. But what shone through actually was the pride of the staff and the passion of the students. When I walked around the campus on that very first day, it was just evident to me that this place was special because the people here make it special. And that's when I sort of thought, if I can make this work, if I can convince the interview panel, then actually this potentially is a really good fit from my own beliefs, but also an exciting development in my career.
Well, I think that shows. It doesn't surprise me you saying that, because that love and that interest and that spirit and your connection to what is at the heart of Gurteen, it has shown, and it's a great thing. I mean, actually, maybe kind of on that, like, what gets Jon Parry going? Maybe you have touched on a number of things, but in general and in where you want to see things, and
So I think, and it's a really interesting question, isn't it? And it's maybe one, Stephen, that as you become a little more mature in years, you start to reflect on your own life, and what is it that actually really motivates you, and what is it that gets you out of bed? Because let's be honest, at my stage in my career, then it's not about paying the mortgage, and it's not about those sorts of things. It's something more than that, which becomes important. And I think that piece about having the opportunity to really help people develop is a thing where, so I enjoyed that part of my role at AHDB, but in reality, when you're working with adults, you're quite often looking to nudge them in a slightly different direction.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereas with young people, it's much more about giving them some leadership and some opportunity and saying, there's the world, go and make of it the best that you possibly can.
Yeah.
So giving people the skills and maybe the belief that they can achieve their ambitions.
Yeah, yeah.
So that piece, I think, is really important. And then honestly, I think there's probably a couple of other things that are in there. So I actually really enjoy good food and good drink. And for me, good food and drink is part and parcel of great community and great, that sort of social interaction.
Yeah.
But to have good food and drink, you need good farms. You need people who can produce those raw ingredients. So I've got a real interest in the sort of the quality of food and the provenance and how that plays out. I'm going to then pause and I'm going to say, well, anybody who really knows me, they know it would be almost impossible for me to answer a question about what's my real interest in life without mentioning sport.
Okay.
So I have a passion for Shrewsbury Town Football Club, and I appreciate I might be
as many as a Tipperary person has, I'm sure.
I appreciate I might be the only person who actually has that passion in this community, Stephen. But let me tell you, Shrewsbury Town soccer team in League One in England, and really it started when we moved into Shrewsbury. And I was working there and I had a young family, and it was a great opportunity for a dad and his children just to spend a Saturday afternoon together, some real special family time. But it grew out of that and it became much more about being involved in that club and that community. So we're still very passionate about that, and we get to watch the football and listen to the football as often as we can. Since we've moved to Tipperary, we've looked for another opportunity to do that. So we've adopted, or maybe we've been adopted by Munster Rugby Club, and now we're very proud fans of Munster. And when times allow, we enjoy getting down to Thomond Stadium and really letting rip. And just for me, there's something very special about that feeling of belonging within a club and having the passion. But there's also something which is, it's not work. It's quite different to the other passion. It's something just to be,
that's crucial, of course. Brilliant. Of course, you're on the border with Offaly. I'm thinking, are there any? Yes, of course. When it comes to rugby, there's all sorts of.
Exactly. So my son actually plays for Burr Rugby, and Burr Rugby are in the Leinster province. So when I'm stood on the sidelines in my red hat that says Munster, I'm quite often looked at with a strange view. But I just took a judgment that says, well, we live in Tipperary and Tipperary's in Munster, so that's where we're joining.
Totally. Yeah, great. Well, maybe we'll go back to Gurteen and just initially, before we sort of maybe move on to the present time, in your first, we'll say 8 months very deliberately, any sort of initial observations that you sort of, anything that struck you when you did move and in the first half year or whatever?
Yeah. So I guess you've chosen that time specifically, Stephen, because that was pre-COVID, wasn't it? Those first few months that me and my family were here pre-COVID. And I think what struck me was that Gurteen very quickly proved to be everything we imagined it would be and more. You know, within weeks, within months of being here, we felt like we were part of a community. Forest O'Kane School was very welcoming to Edwin. You know, they put a lot of effort into making sure that he felt part of that community, and he quickly made some close friends and seemed to have settled in really well into that school environment. So that was important for us as parents. Then myself and Louise, we were very clearly welcomed into the community. Lots of people who interested to know about us, and very welcoming about the fact that we were here at Gurteen, and that seemed to open a number of conversations and a number of doors. You know, people were genuinely pleased to hear that conversation.
Yeah, great,
Yeah.
great. Well, do you know, I still remember at Mike Pearson's leaving do, and I can't even remember what date it was, but it was at early March of 2020.
I think it was the 6th of March. Yeah.
6th of March, and what a time. And when we knew this was coming, but we didn't quite know what the implications were going to be. And Mike, was it Mike joked that in the first year of his time as principal, he had foot and mouth to deal with, and that in your first year, you've got COVID-19. So anyway, it has changed all our lives. But
and you're dead right, Stephen. At the time, I can remember lots of people in the room sort of commenting to say, COVID-19 is nothing compared with foot and mouth. You know, how wrong we were, really, weren't we?
Yeah. Well,
we had no idea what this was going to feel like.
Yeah, yeah. So how do you reflect on the journey of the college, I suppose, for the rest of that term, and then starting into the new term in September as well, and what, I mean, there's just so much you've had to adapt to, both in terms of, well, just in every way, the education, the community, the accommodation, the farm. Any reflections at all?
The thing which I think I start with is a feeling of real pride and sort of sense of achievement for everything, despite all of the challenges that have been laid in front of people. How students and staff have actually managed to continue and make a fist of the very poor circumstances we find ourselves in at the moment. So within reason, you know, we all know that these are difficult times, and that teachers are working from home, and they're struggling away to try and adapt. How do you teach a largely practical curriculum via online communities? But they're making a really good job of it, and they're putting a huge amount of dedication and time into it. You then turn your thoughts to maybe the other group of staff, and they're the staff whose jobs really can't be done without attending the campus. So these are those, you know, we've come to use the term frontline staff or core staff, haven't we? But the farm staff and the kitchen staff and the cleaners. We need them here on campus. We need them to keep us safe and to keep us nourished, and to keep our animals safe and nourished. And those guys have worked away, often in isolation, in really difficult times. So we've got teachers in their spare bedrooms trying to struggle with a curriculum. We've got cleaners who are doing their absolute utmost to make sure the place is sanitized and disinfected, and our door handles are not, you know, any sort of risk to anybody, all those sorts of things. So my first feeling is just immense pride in the amount of work and dedication that the team have put in. I then quickly turn my thoughts to the students, and honestly, the longer this process goes on, the more I think about that group of young people, and Gurteen students are obviously my responsibility, but young people across the whole of the world, really, I think they're the people who are suffering most in this process. The socialization of young people, it's a natural process of growing up, isn't it? You know, college is partly to do with education and partly to do with getting the qualification, but when you're 19, that's not the bits that you remember. What you remember are the fun, the crack, the friendship, the community spirit, you know, the hiking, all those things that normal 19-year-olds get up to. And that's been stripped away from this group of students. They haven't been given the opportunity to do that. You know, they've really struggled in terms of that process. And for those, I think, you know, we've got to recognise that whilst staff are doing absolutely everything they can in their power, this group of students are having a very different experience that any other group of students have been through any establishment previously. And we will continue to do our best for them. We phone every student every week, and we have a one-to-one conversation. We make sure that we record attendances on Zoom, and we're checking in on people to make sure that they're okay. And that's not us about trying to monitor attendance or worry about that. It's more about us trying to make sure people have got some connectivity in their life.
Yeah.
And they've got some sense of community.
Yeah.
And we've spent a lot of time trying to tell students and staff that actually some of the most important things they can do during the pandemic is just to phone up.
Yeah.
And while they're drinking a coffee, have a chat.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what we chat about, let's make sure that we take the time to have those conversations.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, and to be connected and know you're part of the bigger picture and the team, that's what, it motivates you, it enables you to get on with what is good and healthy for you, and not least the college.
It gives us a lot more focus around some of those softer areas that perhaps pre-pandemic we didn't think so much about. We didn't think about the social room or the dining room. It was just part of our community, whereas actually they're the things that we really miss now. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I have to say, and that's been evident anytime I've dropped in, that the operation and adjusting to things, well, just for me, just on the surface or what I could see, it was just evident. So it's powerful in the challenge, and of course, things will change, and I suppose actually I've been reflecting myself, John, and you're in this position now at this stage, that for myself, most of my time in Tipperary now has been within the pandemic era, and the same could be said of your position. But that won't be the case. We look forward to life beyond COVID-19 joyfully, but
I think it's probably worth, just as well as I did, Roy Kingston, chairman of governors at the college, a very wise man. And whenever I speak to Roy, he always says to me, the pandemic will be history.
Yeah.
We need to live in the future, sort of thing. And I think that's a really wise way of looking at things, to say, yeah, we've got to deal with it now, but at some point it will be history.
Yeah, it will. And with that in mind, and as you're going through given that you're here a year and a half now, and really working through the things that are part of Gurteen, and how do you begin to see the future? Are there things that you think are things that are worth really building on for the future, things that you think might be developed in particular ways? I realize, this might include speculative things that are not the things to talk about here and now in this setting, but are there areas that you just feel, I can see the college developing in this way, or this is worth strengthening?
Yeah, and I think you're right, Stephen. So as a governor, we're just going through that process of development at the moment, and we're starting to draft out our thoughts about what the next set of objectives might look like. But rather than think about specifics, maybe I can answer that by giving a feel for some thoughts I had probably before I arrived in Gurteen, after having been offered the job, about what is it that you'd like to try and achieve over the next period of time while you're in post. And in my head, it's all about being able to. So Stephen, I was saying that I did a little bit of reflecting before I actually arrived at Gurteen after the interview about what might work. What might I want to try and achieve in my role as principal, and what might be a measure of how I would feel success? And the conclusion that I came to is really what I was hoping to be able to do in some way is to be able to make sure that you hand Gurteen on to the next incumbent, the next principal of Gurteen, in a stronger position when I received it. And I think if every principal of Gurteen has achieved that over the years, college will continue to develop. So when I started to think about that, it then became in my mind relatively simple. Like, well, what does that look like? I think, you know, we need to make sure that our finances are in really strong position, and that we are in a position where we can service all of our needs, and we can manage ourselves prudently. We need to make sure that our farm is in good heart, and that our soil and our livestock and our welfare and all of those things are absolutely where they need to be.
Yeah.
But one that I would be interested in is something around the environment, and maybe measuring the impact of college on the environment and trying to reduce that. So maybe something around the landscape and the biodiversity. So something about measuring the impact. But I guess I always come back to students. And I would say that the thing which I think is the vision for Gurteen for me is that we continue to develop students who have the confidence and the skill to make a difference to the world when they enter that world of employment. You know, we've got a really strong alumni of students at Gurteen, people that are working in all sorts of professions. Yes, of course, we've got farmers, but we've got politicians, and we've got academics, and we've got ministers, and we've got all sorts of people that have been through. And wouldn't it be great in another 40 years' time to say the same, and to say that students from Gurteen have actually made a difference in their chosen fields?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, I suppose even just being aware that like the majority of the level 5 and 6 students were born within the 21st century, and their working lives, their expectations will be that they will be working well into the second half, well through the second half of the 21st century, and you're investing for a future that just we can't imagine. And have you thoughts or concerns about, maybe we'll not try and think of the second half of the 21st century, but just for now anyway, as these young people step out into whatever their area of work will be, but particularly in terms of rural life and agriculture, what do you see as concerns that you have about for today and for the coming, well, maybe I was going to say years, but maybe decades? Are there things that you'd be concerned about?
It's a really powerful question, Stephen, and I think quite a lot about the year 2060, because I sort of say to our students and to our staff that the students that we've got here today, they're the farm managers of 2060. And you know, that helps me put in perspective what it is we're trying to achieve. And I think what I take from that are two things: that the skills that we teach students are very important. We need them to be safe, and we need them to be productive, and we need them to treat our farms the way that they should be treated, and care for our environment. So for the next 5 or 10 years, honestly, most of our students are going to be operatives. They're going to drive tractors, they're going to milk cows, they're going to rear lambs. So they need the skills to be able to do that. But actually, in their lifetime, those skills are going to change. You know, the skill to drive a tractor. I grew up being taught to drive a Massey Ferguson 135, as I'm sure lots of people watching this will have done. But nowadays, actually, it's electronic. You know, we have forward reverse shuttles and automatic gearboxes. We have lots of self-steering devices on tractors that keep within 2 centimeters of where you tell the tractor to go. So the skills of driving a tractor are going to change. So in my mind, what actually were really important are more to do with the attitudes and the beliefs that we instill in our students. The attitudes and the beliefs that every day is a school day, but that life is always about learning and developing, and that, you know, just because I'm good at something today doesn't mean I can't get better at it if I keep trying or look for different ways of doing those things. So I think there's something there about trying to tell our students that actually, to be successful, they need to embrace change. And they need to understand that the great farm managers of 2060 don't look like the great farm managers of 2020.
Yeah.
They'll look different. I can't tell them what they're going to look like. I don't have those skills,
Yeah.
but I know that they will be different to the people that to their parents and what their parents are currently doing in terms of that. I guess the things which I think will remain constant is, I think Ireland will always be an exporting nation in terms of its agricultural products.
Okay.
We're a nation which is blessed with some great environment. We're warm. We've got damp weather. We've got great soils, and we've got a relatively small natural population here. So we're always going to produce more food than the island consumes. And I think what that really tells us is that Ireland and its farmers have a responsibility around provenance, around origin, around making sure our food is world class, because we're going to have to try and sell our butter to somebody. We're going to need to sell our lamb to somebody. And what I don't think the sensible thing to do is to try and compete at the lowest end of a product value. So we shouldn't be trying to sell the cheapest lamb or the cheapest butter in the world. We should be so proud of the butter which is made in Ireland that we believe that it actually should hold a value to it, sort of thing. And to be able to do that, the trends that I can predict are going to become important is consumers are going to be really interested in animal welfare. They're going to want to know that our animals have been treated well, properly and carefully. I think that consumers are going to be really interested in environmental impact. They're going to want to know that we've managed the soil and the rivers effectively and that we haven't polluted anywhere. And they're probably going to want to know something about the people that are responsible for this. So telling the story about who we are, where we've come from, and actually making sure that there is a connection there. I think, I don't know, but I think those things will become more important as we progress through the 21st century.
Certainly. And I mean, well, and it's interesting. I mean, that's your back. You said earlier about that being your particular heart in biodiversity and what the environment is like. And I suppose it's interesting. An Englishman coming to Ireland, probably I think you also have something there that helps us maybe take a look at ourselves and think, right, this is what we have unique or special. Do you want to say anything more about what it might mean to be Irish and to have that Irish identity? Well, you've kind of been covering it anyway, but do you think your English background sort of helps maybe see that in a different light?
I think it does in a strange way, Stephen. So and I would absolutely recommend anybody to try being an outsider for a while. It gives you a different perspective on life. I was talking to somebody recently, and we were talking about diversity and the values of diversity. And I've spent basically all of my life in rooms of people that look like me, white middle-aged men who are interested in agriculture. And for the first time in my life, whilst I look like everybody else in the room, I sound a little bit different because I've got a different accent to all those agriculturalists that I'm sharing the room with. But it definitely gives you a slightly different perspective being an outsider, because you get to see the things which are really valuable and important. And I think anybody that's visited New Zealand would tell you that they recognise that in the 80s and 90s in New Zealand. But people that go there now say, actually, the New Zealanders have probably gone too far, and their agriculture has become a little bit intensive and a little bit exploitative, and there are some problems around pollution and those sorts of things. And I guess really there's a lesson for Ireland to learn there, and to say, well, let's make sure we really understand what we value, and let's put some effort into protecting that. And clearly we've got to be profitable. That's a very important element of maintaining a sustainable community and a good rural community. People have got to make a living. But I think we've got to do that in a way which is empathetic to our environment around us.
I, I mean, and sorry, maybe this is possibly drawing it back to not so far into the future, but like, have you just what about the present state of agriculture in Ireland, and whatever pressures from Brexit, or, well, even just the times we're in at the moment, but and environmental issues, do you identify any particular concerns as well, maybe as the trade implications of Brexit?
Yeah.
In?
So I think there's probably two things in there. We nearly made it through the interview without mentioning Brexit. It got there in the end, but it is going to have an impact, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because the reality is that I think the second most popular cheese brand in the UK is Pilgrim's Choice, and Pilgrim's Choice is an Irish cheddar cheese brand. It doesn't necessarily sell itself as an Irish cheddar, interestingly, in the UK, but it, and lots of consumers in the UK wouldn't know that, but it is an Irish brand. So there's going to be some changes there, because there will be a slowing down of trade with the UK. But I guess Ireland is uniquely placed to be able to exploit other markets. So I don't see that medium term being a big challenge. I think there might be a short term challenge, but I think medium term, the rest of Europe, America, Canada, these places will still value the high quality products that Ireland has to offer. I think there are some challenges which are short term, which are maybe not Brexit related, and I think that they are challenges around labour availability. So we need to be clear to our young people that we value them and that we want them to stay and develop on the Irish rural farms, because otherwise we could be in a situation where farms in America and Australia and the UK look more attractive, or maybe jobs outside farming attractive. So I think we as a community of agriculturalists, but also of people in rural Ireland, have a real task on our hands to convince people that there is an attractive and viable future for young people living in rural communities. And we've got to be able to describe that and paint a picture, and people have got to be able to understand what their role in that might look like in terms of it. And I think the college has got an important part to play in that, to be able to show people that there are good jobs with fair salaries and good lifestyles to be earned by staying in rural Ireland.
Yes, sorry, I think there was a little pause in the or a break in the recording there, but we got you, John. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, John. We really appreciate you sharing your time and your thoughts and your energy, and I know for many people they'll feel they've got to know you during this time. So thank you, and we wish you well for your continued work and all you're doing there.
Thanks for the opportunity, Stephen, and for everybody that's watching. If they see me in the street, please do say hello.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you, and we'll be at Tuesday chat again. So we'll see you again.
Bye now.